The Long Road to True Happiness by WierdRandomTina. Chapter 21. Another Promising Week. Poppy did not like rushing her visits with Branch. Now that they had become close friends, it didn't seem appropriate to treat their visits like appointments, a set hour to participate in one definite activity, and then as soon as that time was up, the activity was complete, she would abruptly leave. Gradually, as Branch grew more comfortable with companionship, she began sticking around longer. Sometimes they would do a bunch of activities. Sometimes they would do nothing at all. After the incident with Creek just over a week ago, Poppy and Branch had unanimously decided that the rigid schedule was no longer effective. How many times has Poppy had to switch to a different day or time? So Branch welcomed her to pop over any time she'd like, and if he was out, he'd leave a note on the door in case she stopped by that time. She continued bringing him snacks and items from events, and he continued to offer her little surprises from time to time. Another bowl of raspberries, a little bouquet of flowers, a pretty blue shell he found that he thought she would like. Of course she did. So, over the week, the pink magenta troll and the grey-black troll had spent time together on Sunday, Monday, Thursday, Saturday, and the following Sunday. On the first Sunday, they were busy with an intense competition of tic-tac-troll outside of the bunker, when DJ Suki came along with a message from King Peppy. He needed Princess Poppy to meet up with him right away at his pod for a classified royal fun evaluation, and he said you would know what that means. Poppy indeed knew what her dad meant, and it was not something that could be postponed. She instantly stood up. "Sorry, Branch, I know we're in the middle of a game, but I really have to take this." "It's all right. We'll continue when you're available next." His soft grey-blue eyes stared up at her with pure patience, free from the slightest trace of disappointment or annoyance. A flash of mischief then appeared in them, though, and he added, "As long as you don't mind losing." Poppy put her hands on her hips in mock annoyance. "Excuse me, we are tied as of right now. Quit being so smug. I look forward to seeing you lose." Poppy felt her heart beginning to flutter, as it always does when he's being laid back and compassionate, with a hint of silly teasing each other in their signature playful banter, or when he's looking at her with those soft grey-blue eyes. She quickly took off before her fond feelings could cause a distraction off to her duty, saying a quick goodbye to Branch and Suki. Instead of leaving as well, the DJ turned her sparkly crimson face towards Branch, who was still seated in the grass with tic-tac-troll in front of him. "Man, I haven't played that game in ages. Mind if I join you for a round or two?" In the past, Branch would have been maddened by such a request, blown her off with a rude or sarcastic comment, or outright snapped at her to buzz off. But then again, in the past he wouldn't have been playing a board game, or sitting casually outside of his bunker. Sure. So Suki settled herself where Poppy had been seated, and the two trolls ended up playing half a dozen rounds. Branch had to admit that he kind of enjoyed Suki's presence. She was a tad goofy, but not overly chatty. Her personality seemed to be influenced by her surroundings. At parties, she had a reputation of being very loud and crazy and over the top, but was mellow when she was around fewer trolls and in a calmer atmosphere, such as the campout and now. Arriving at her father's orange and green pod, Poppy made her way inside to find him patiently waiting for her, his tousled silver-streaked magenta hair the only thing visible from the back of the couch. For the next hour, King Peppy and his daughter discussed alterations to make to the village activities even more fun. Possible changes to the standard layout of festivals, improvements in confetti cleaning tactics, updating the automatic mushroom lights, to name a few things. Though this kind of meeting was formal, they still managed to goof around here and there, while keeping their topics on track, and making progress with suggestions. Regardless of the situation, Poppy found her father's laugh contagious. Whether it was the deep cackling laugh itself, or the way his long fluffy moustache would bounce, the exact reason didn't matter. With the royal fun evaluation wrapped up, King Peppy said regretfully, "I hope I didn't interrupt your tight schedule." No, not at all. I had some free time after I toured the library, so I just played some games with Branch. But I can go back at any time. He's always very understanding.
And how is that working out? Is he continuing to show improvement?
Poppy had been keeping her dad up to date on the progress of her long-awaited friendship with Branch. Even now that she's an adult, she still tells her father every detail going on in her life, as he's always been an intent listener and a great advice giver. Since her last update was showing Peppy the scrapbook she made for Branch, Poppy summarised how he'd been insecure about whether or not he was worthy of being her friend, and how she assured him that he was. She couldn't figure out how to approach the whole Creek incident, and would rather focus on the positives with Branch than dwell on what had not gone so well that day. So she left that part out entirely. Instead, she evasively mentioned how Creek had had a picnic planned for her, and how he's getting more comfortable with hugs.
That's so good to hear, sweetheart.
The king praised his daughter, his amber eyes glowing to match the approving smile on his orange face.
I'm so proud of you. I always knew that if anyone could heal his troubled soul, it would be you.
His warm words made Poppy feel like a little trolling again. But then King Peppy continued, raising one bushy eyebrow.
What about Creek? How are things going with him? You haven't mentioned him in quite a while. He used to be a frequent topic.
Oh, Poppy hadn't really spoken to Creek since the fight. Even after what he did, she couldn't bring herself to be rude to him. But there was no way she could even think about being friendly with him until he apologised. She didn't know how to behave around him at this point, so she'd been avoiding him, in the politest, least offensive way possible. They'd made brief eye contact a few times. Sometimes he'd look away, sometimes she would. They ran into each other once, almost literally, so she'd said a little, good morning, how are you? Creek had responded with a neutral,
hello, I'm fine, thanks,
and then kept walking, giving no hint of his inner emotions. Was he regretting what he did? Was he still believing he was the victim? Would they ever be close friends again? Did Poppy want him to be close again? It's going okay, Dad. We've kind of grown apart lately.
He does not approve of you being so close to Branch, does he?
Poppy's eyes widened. Her elderly father appeared absent-minded most of the time, yet he was more observant than one may realise, and often knew much more than he let on. Well, yeah, kind of. Actually, yes. And he was really unfair to Branch a few days ago. And to me. So the princess described the whole mix-up in one giant run-on sentence. Peppy nodded occasionally, remaining patient and quiet. It felt good to vent her frustrations. She didn't think it was appropriate to dump all her problems with Creek onto the snack pack. He was still their friend, and she didn't want to make them feel guilty for it, and or cause conflict among them. There was no reason they shouldn't still be civil with Creek, as what happened between him and Poppy had nothing to do with the others. Her father was the perfect neutral party. Ending her rant, she had to ask, Dad, is it bad that I've kind of been avoiding Creek? I know everyone makes mistakes, and I'm not trying to be mean, but every time I look at him, all I see is what he did to Branch and I. Should I be getting over it and trying to make amends?
Absolutely not, King Peppy said without a doubt. He was the sole cause of this trouble, so he should be coming to you to make amends, not the other way around. What Creek did was wrong, and the least he can do is take responsibility for that. Everyone makes mistakes, yes, but this isn't dropping someone's birthday cake on the floor or borrowing their paintbrushes without asking, accidentally making an offensive comment, or telling a simple fib. Lying to purposefully hurt someone's feelings, then making no attempt to apologise on top of that, is not something that can be easily dismissed. Poppy smiled warmly as she wrapped her arms around her stout figure. Thank you, Dad. It makes me feel 100 times better. It makes the situation so much clearer. After the hug ended, Poppy detoured from the subject a bit, and mentioned how nice it was that Branch had set up a picnic for her. Poppy's entire face beamed as she elaborated. I know. I mean, he even baked me my favourite pie, which I had mentioned way back at the campout.
and I didn't even think he was listening. He really has changed so much. He's still reserved and has his sarcastic and grouchy moments, but as funny as it sounds, I really like that about him. It makes him so interesting. It makes him special. And it's often quite amusing. He may not sing and dance or go to parties, but he's fun in a different way. A way I never knew I was missing out on. Princess Poppy rambled on about Branch for a full 5 minutes. When she was finally finished, Peppy didn't say much, but his sly expression spoke volumes. The king looked at his daughter in the classic way he does when she's blind to something he's seeing very clearly. She tilted her head at him. What? He said nothing for a noticeable amount of time, just staring intensely at her to build up the suspense. Another common thing he's known to do.
Nothing, sweetheart. I'm just happy to hear it's working out, and that he makes you happy.
Monday was a casual morning. Hiking, several competitive games of Strike 5, and naming the clouds again. With Branch participating more this time, and the two trolls laying much closer together. On their way back to the bunker, Poppy challenged him. Hey Branch, guess what? You're it! She poked his arm and then sprinted ahead of him. After a second, she peered over her shoulder to see if he was chasing her. He was standing right where she left him, staring after her. You're it, Branch! Catch me if you can! She resumed her running, but was getting the hint that her companion was probably not going to give chase. Maybe he was tired and didn't feel like playing around. Or maybe he didn't even know what being it meant. The princess slowed to a halt and turned around to face him again. Except he was no longer standing there. The grey-black troll was nowhere to be seen. She whipped her head around, bangs and ponytail bouncing all over the place, as she wondered where the hair he had disappeared to. Unseen to her, he swung down from one of the above trees with his hair, landing neatly behind her. Her companion lightly tapped her arm and softly returned the "You're it." Poppy squeaked in surprise and stumbled away from him, tripping over her own feet and wound up plopping right onto the grass. Branch chuckled. Well, more like a light laugh, actually, and then ran off. With a huge grin, she scrambled to her feet and chased after him, shouting, Hey, that's not fair! You caught me off guard! No matter how much determination Poppy possessed, she could not catch up with him, unless he obviously let her. And then it was his turn again to chase her. She could never escape him, unless he obviously let her. He was so swift through the bushes, it was almost like he could go right through them. Half of the time she couldn't tell if he was going up, down, left or right. In the end she admitted defeat and leaned against a tree, completely exhausted. Meanwhile he stood casually nearby with a sly grin, barely even out of breath. On the way back to the bunker, once Poppy had recovered from the intense game of tag, the cheerful pink troll talked about the scrapbook she's been working on for a while, that she's almost completed. A collection of special pieces of nature, anything out of the ordinary. So after they parted ways, Branch spent his afternoon secretly searching for items for Poppy's scrapbook. Instead of building more traps around the bunker perimeter as he originally planned, the grey troll managed to find an asymmetrical oak leaf, a feather from a rare bird, a beautiful little mauve pebble, and a funny-shaped twig, an unusual-shaped maple key, and an unusually large maple leaf, a flat shell with a neat little swirl. That evening, Branch waited outside the village library. He had passed by Biggie earlier in the day and questioned the princess's whereabouts. When she exited the building and spotted him, she scampered over to him and asked what was up, and what's in the brown box he was holding. Suddenly feeling shy, Branch stammered, yeah. This is, I'm not sure if these are exactly what you're looking for, but... He opened up the box as he explained, but, hopefully some of it could be used for your nature scrapbook. Poppy's already vibrant fuchsia eyes lit up even brighter as she looked over the contents. Oh, wow! These are perfect! Thank you! Her gaze grew softer as she added, Did you spend your whole afternoon gathering things for me?
Well, I didn't have anything else to do anyway.
As soon as Branch said it, he worried it would sound uncaring. but then he noticed Poppy's warm gaze shift into a slight smirk, as if she suspected he had other things to do, but set them aside to do something nice for her. Poppy had tried to stop over by the bunker on Wednesday morning, but found, as Branch had promised, a note on the hatch door.
Out collecting stones by the river. Won't be back till late afternoon.
So she flipped over the paper, took out a sparkly purple pen, and wrote in her swirly handwriting on the blank side, "Hiya! Sorry I missed you. I'll probably stop by tomorrow afternoon. Hugs until then." Thursday afternoon was meant to be a more productive day of collecting supplies to repair some of Branch's tools. But they ended up coming across a stray fuzzball and playing catch instead, followed by finding a larger ball to kick back and forth and try to score points on each other, and lastly borrowing some rackets and a birdie to play badminton. All three were entertaining, as Branch was naturally skilled while Poppy was clumsier than a fly in a spiderweb. Halfway through the badminton match, a small audience began to accumulate, attracted by the princess's varying amused noises. Biggie, Smidge, Guy Diamond, and half a dozen others. The game made for plenty of laughs, especially from Poppy, with most of the bystanders cheering for Branch. Unseen to them, Creek was passing by the area. He glared at the scene, particularly at the grey troll, and then continued on without a word. On Saturday, Poppy took Branch swimming again. Sutton and Chenille joined them after a few minutes, but Branch didn't mind the extra company. In fact, he found much of their sibling bickering entertaining. Then, while Branch was off on the other end of the pool, chatting with Cooper and Biggie, who were passing by, Sutton and Chenille turned to Poppy. The pink twin pointed out in a dreamy voice, "Wow, Branch sure is hiding a lot of muscle under that vest." The princess felt her face instantly heat up despite the chilly breeze. Even more so than when the blue twin made a follow-up comment about his form in the same tone. Though Poppy's eyes agreed with her friend's accurate and obvious observations, her mouth blurted out, "Yeah, whatever. I mean, sure, I guess, but it's not that impressive. It's probably just from all the building and stuff he's done over the years. So, it's not like it's a big deal or anything. So what? It's only, like, mildly impressive." Sutton and Chenille were staring at her as if she'd told them she never wanted to be hugged again. The more she fumbled, the stronger that stare grew. Thankfully for Poppy, Biggie and Cooper were making their way around to talk to them, and Branch was swimming back over too. So the matter was dropped, and the girls returned to casual normal. Though it was a challenge for the princess to get the awkward conversation totally off her mind, while the vestless Branch was right there in front of her, plus Sutton and Chenille kept eyeing him whenever he wasn't looking their way. It gave Poppy a strange emotion she couldn't quite describe. Like a stone had been dropped into her stomach, and ants were crawling up her spine. But one thing was for sure. She did not like it. So what if the twins think he's attractive? He is attractive. So why is it bothering me? I guess it's just weird to see other trolls giving him positive attention. Another hour later, the twins had left the pond, followed by Biggie and lastly Cooper. So once more it was just Poppy and Branch. After a few more minutes of chatting, mostly friendly teasing from her, sarcastic but contented responses from him, the pretty pink troll offered to walk him back to his bunker again. But rather than accepting or declining, he shuffled his feet in the grass as he shyly murmured,
Actually, is that okay if may I walk you back to your pod instead?"
Poppy's eyes nearly popped out of her skull. "Really? Yeah, of course. I mean, you don't have to. That's very kind of you. But I know you don't like being in the centre of the village."
"Yeah, but we're much closer to your pod than my bunker. It wouldn't make sense for you to travel all the way out here and then all the way back again."
"But I don't mind going out of my way. I have lots of time."
"I know, but I have much more time. And you go out of your way for me all the time. I want to do the same for you."
Branch could hear his tone growing softer, and see her pretty pink face brightening at his considerate offer.
So he quickly cleared his throat and ruffled up his voice. "I'm starting walking. You might as well follow."
And so he began walking toward the village. For once, the bubbly princess didn't object. and after a few seconds he heard her scurrying after him. She caught up to him, a warm smile still occupying her face, and the two trolls walked side by side out into the village. The trek to Poppy's pod was uneventful. Not many trolls were out and about here, so only gave a quick greeting to a dozen trolls or so. Branch looked a bit uncomfortable at being in the main area of the village, but didn't seem overly jittery. Standing in front of her pod's entrance, Poppy turned to face her companion directly. "Thank you for walking with me, Branch. I really appreciate you going out of your way for me." She giggled and added, "You really are such a sweetie." She adored how his cheeks went lavender every time she complimented him. It certainly made his follow-up scoff and eye roll seem very feeble. And after a few seconds, she held her arms out to the sides and inquired, "Goodbye hug?" They hadn't hugged since the conflict with Creek Day. After all the affection they had shared in such a short period of time, Poppy didn't want to push the reserved grey troll too far. But she's been craving another one of his wonderful embraces ever since. To make him feel more at ease, she added, "Just a quick one?" Branch's exaggerated sigh was quickly contradicted with a warm half-smirk, and the way he opened his arms to welcome her. It took her breath away, quite literally, to the point where she felt lightheaded, and ended up stumbling over her own feet as she stepped forward. Poppy chuckled at her own clumsiness, and the fact that Branch was fondly shaking his head at her silly fumble, before she contentedly settled into his unwavering, waiting arms. Poppy resisted the urge to squeeze him tightly. She didn't want to force him to stay close to her if he didn't want to. But several noticeable seconds had passed, and he was still holding on to her. Her smile grew as she allowed her arms to give him a gentle squeeze. "So much for a quick one," she silently teased him. After a few more heartbeats, Branch finally withdrew, but was not in a hurry. The grey troll was shocked at how natural it felt to hug her after such a short period of time. With a brief, "See you again soon," he headed off through the village. Poppy watched him go. Even once he was out of sight, she could still see his beautiful pale blue eyes and sweet little smile, as if he was standing right in front of her, and could still hear his incredibly soft voice ringing in her ears. Inside her pod, Poppy sat on the edge of her bed, feeling strange, but not in a bad way. Her insides wiggled like jello, while her head spun like she was on a tilt-a-whirl. Yet it made her exhilarated, like she had enough energy to sprint around the whole village for 24 hours straight. Yet, at the same time, she was still kind of sad, because Branch was no longer nearby. For the last few weeks, she had always felt this way after parting with him, and each time grew stronger than the previous. The princess continued to try and convince herself it was nothing important, even though she could not stop thinking about it. "Poppy!" Her hair nearly sprung off her head as Satin, Chenille, DJ Suki and Smidge burst into her pod, rushing up to her excitedly and bombarding her with questions and comments. "Did we just see what we thought we saw? Girl, I can't believe Branch just let you hug him. And he hugged you back? Was that your first kiss with him? Since when does Branch hug anyone? Is he a good hugger?" It took a few minutes for Poppy's thoughts to catch up after such an interruption. The flurry of words ceased, with 4 pairs of eyes, pink, blue, rose and more blue, staring intently at her. Blinking a few times, the magenta troll answered as accurately as she could. Yeah, you did. You saw me hug Branch. I can't really believe it either. But no, we've hugged a few times before, and he's still not fond of excessive affection. He doesn't want everybody all over him, but he's okay with me, at least, now. And yeah, he's a very good hugger, actually." "When was your first hug?" Chenille asked. It was a couple weeks ago." It seemed like yesterday, plus Poppy's brain was still groggy. "How did you get him to hug you?" Smidge asked next. Her little yellow face hardened as if it was the most important question in history. "He didn't. He was the one who asked me." Her companion's eyes widened, so she elaborated. "He's never let me hug him for the longest time. He had even told me,
"No hugging under any circumstances."
but when that royal blunder happened, he saw that I was sad, so he offered me one at hug time.
Wow, that was so kind of him!
Saturn and Chenille exclaimed, and then Saturn added, I never expected him to be caring like that.
This one looked like a genuinely affectionate hug,
Suki added. Yeah, it was. All of his are. The very first one was a bit timid, but now they're so nice and comforting. He even told me he thought he'd be rusty after not hugging for so long. But really, he's a natural.
Kind of like the poem, Smidge concluded. Something you wouldn't expect from him, but secretly he's amazing at.
Poppy found herself blushing at the fond memory. Ha! Yeah, exactly like that. Before noon on Saturday, Branch was wandering around the north perimeter of the village, a quaint forested area where the commotion of crowds was in earshot, but with no visible civilization. Eventually, he caught Princess Poppy's voice, near enough to make out occasional words, mingled in with higher-pitched voices of young trolls. Rounding a small grassy boulder, Branch found her amongst a group of around 15 to 20 excited, yet unusually serious trollings, each holding either a blue or yellow piece of paper. He hung back, not exactly hiding, but not wanting to interrupt either, as Poppy split the colourful crowd into 2 equal groups according to their paper. All right, yellow group, I want each of you to read over the entire script while I work on the song lyrics with the blue group. Then, when I'm done with them, I'll help each of you with your individual lines. Hey, look! Poppy was interrupted by a pale yellow girl with a loose, soft pink ponytail and round red glasses. It's the bunker guy! Branch's eyes widened a bit as the trolling pointed him out. Over a dozen little eyes focused onto him, followed by a pair of gorgeous fuchsia ones that lit up like the sun once she looked at him. Branch, hi! What are you doing all the way out here? Her just as stunning smile took his breath away, and he had to clear his throat before speaking.
I was just passing through.
Most of the children gave him a cheerful, Hi, Branch! What if you asked him a random question or made a random comment? When their excited chatter died down, Poppy explained to Branch, The junior trollings and I are rehearsing for a surprise school play. You're welcome to hang around, or I can meet you at your bunker in a couple of hours. But you gotta promise to keep this rehearsal a secret. A little purple and freckle-skinned girl with light blue hair spoke up, 'cause it's gonna be a surprise. Branch promised, and then settled himself a ways away on a fallen log, reading over a book he had happened to bring with him, but looking up every now and then to watch the goofy and cute trollings milling around. But, as usual, much of his focus was on the lovely, bright magenta princess. He admired how tender, patient, and supportive she was with each individual child, giving a shy boy confidence when he expressed fear of being on stage, offering tips to one of the older girls to help her remember her lines, comforting a little dark green boy who kept messing up the same lyrics, assisting a young glitter girl who was struggling with reading. After Poppy familiarized the yellow group with their lines, she eventually returned to the blue group's singing routine, as the others started practicing their lines off to one side on their own. Branch had put his book away and was snacking on some trail mix, his own healthy, non-sugary blend of nuts and seeds and dried berries, with a hint of maple and some mild spices. He visibly flinched when a squeaky little voice sounded right beside him. Hello there! The smallest trolling of the entire bunch, a lime-green boy with blue hair and purple pants, had seemingly appeared out of nowhere. He introduced himself as Keith, staring up at Branch, with a blank face to match his nonchalant tone. He remembered this boy as part of the yellow group.
Shouldn't you be practicing your lines?
I only have 3 lines, and I memorized them already. Keith cleared his throat and proudly recited his lines, in the flattest voice Branch had ever heard, while standing there like a statue.
Poppy will have to work with him on that.
Aloud, Branch nodded and forced a praise.
Good job.
What's that? Keith pointed to the bag in Branch's hand.
Trail mix.
Keith climbed onto the log and peered into the bag. Can I have some?
Branch doubted a trolling would enjoy such a bland meal. Well, if you want, but...
Keith's tiny green hand reached into the bag to grab a handful before Branch could finish his light warning. The child stayed silent for a few seconds, staring off in a daze as he pondered over the new flavour. Finally he decided, "It's chewy and crunchy. It doesn't have much taste. It's kind of strange." Then he looked up at Branch and unexpectedly added, "I like it." After bringing up a minor argument between two of the trollings, Poppy glanced over at Branch. Even though he hadn't interacted with her or the groups at all other than the greeting, it was nice to have his calm presence nearby. For him to be there. Even without saying a word, he made her feel more relaxed and secure. And looking at him now made warm butterflies dance across her stomach, and a sappy smile spread on her face. The little scene that was unfolding was just too flipping adorable. Keith was sitting close beside him, and Branch was sharing his snack with the little boy. Between bites, one would say a few words, and the other would briefly reply. Poppy was jolted out of her little trance when Priscilla, the girl with the glasses who first spotted Branch, and CJ, the girl who made Branch keep the secret, approached her with a few questions about the ending of the script. Then, without warning, Priscilla asked, "Princess Poppy, is Branch your boyfriend?" If Poppy were taking a sip of a beverage, she would have spit it out. "No! No. He's just a very good friend of mine." Why was her skin suddenly growing so hot? "Aunt DJ says he's pretty cool once you get to know him," CJ contributed, who resembled Suki in appearance, clothing, and personality, enough to be her own daughter. "She even played tic-tac-toe with him once." Poppy wondered for a second when Branch would have hung out with DJ Suki, then quickly realised it must have been the day she left him to tend to her dad's royal fun task. She glanced over at him again with another smile. He had given the rest of his food to Keith. "Ah, Branch is finally making friends with other trolls." Poppy abruptly redirected her focus after a few moments, uncomfortable with the curious stare Priscilla was giving her. Meanwhile, Keith had finished off the trail mix as he continued to chat with Branch. "Why do you live underground?"
Because I want to."
"What's your favourite colour?"
"Green, I guess."
"I have a plushie at home that kind of looks like a bird and kind of like a fish."
"That's interesting."
He handed the empty bag back to Branch. The little boy then went on to tell a story of how Poppy had comforted him a few months ago, when he had dropped his piece of cake on the ground, and then she gave up her own piece of cake to him. "And then there was the time she gave me a special rainbow lollipop when I scraped my knee. I like Princess Poppy. Do you like Princess Poppy?"
Branch answered cautiously, "Yes." He was not about to have this conversation, especially with a nosy trolling.
"She is real nice."
The less he elaborated, the better. Thankfully, Keith said no more about Princess Poppy, just started talking more about his part in the play. Branch was amused at how relieved he was. It was silly to be anxious about such a tiny child asking him such an innocent question. Of course he likes Poppy. Everybody likes Poppy. But Branch's relief was smothered by humiliation when Keith started back towards the group and loudly announced, "Princess Poppy, Branch says he likes you." Branch's eyes nearly popped out of his skull, and the automatic facepalm was hard to make his skin sting. But hopefully it at least covered the bit of a deep blush growing on his cheeks. It didn't hide it enough. Poppy giggled at his cute embarrassment, then shouted back to Keith, perfectly loud enough for Branch to hear and looking more at him than the trolling, "Well, tell Branch I like him too." A few of the nearby trollings were paying attention, including CJ and Priscilla, let out a tiny synchronized "Aww," and Keith needlessly repeated to Branch, "Princess Poppy said she likes you too," before rejoining his group. In a heartbeat, the crowd of tiny trolls went about their business, as if the cringy exchange had never happened. Branch was torn between feeling completely mortified and slightly amused. However, he could have sworn Poppy glanced in his direction more than once with a coy gleam in her eyes, and he was definitely unsure how to feel about that.
"Hello, Scampy. Want to come and say hello?" Oh, a bit shy today, are you, girl? Everyone, this is Scamps. She's the dog of my cousin, who's come round for a visit. My Fizz is all asleep on the sofa right now, but you might hear Scampy moving around. Do you want to come and say hi, girl? No? You okay? Okay. Later towards the evening, Branch ascended up his elevator at the sound of Poppy's signature knock on the door. When he opened the hatch, he was surprised to find not just the Pink Princess, but the whole snack bag standing behind her.
Hi?
Hi, Branch. I know I agreed to not bring anyone else to your bunker, but then again, we had agreed on no hugging, so... Anyway, my friends and I were hoping for a quiet place to work on some scrapbooking. Is right here okay?
Sure. I'm assuming you're gonna invite me to join in.
You know it. Poppy winked at him. Branch knew it wasn't a flirty way, but it still made his stomach do a somersault. I did say I would teach you how to scrapbook sometime. Why not make that time right now? Branch rolled his eyes but climbed up out of the hatch regardless.
Yeah, why not?
In her usual excited manner, Poppy tapped her feet with a little squeal and then bounced forward and threw her arms around him. Instead of his usual cosy hug, Branch merely put one arm part way around her and gave her a casual pat-pat on the back. But Poppy wasn't offended. Over the last little while, she's discovered he's not comfortable being affectionate with her when there's an audience, even a small one that's barely paying attention. So she didn't tease or push him. The group spread out in the grass around the hatch door. Guy, Smidge, Biggie and DJ were gathered off to the right side, around a wide tree stump. The book settled on it like a table. The twins sat off to the left in a grassy patch. Cooper was out in front, making a colourful mess, while Poppy and Branch settled behind and against the boulder. The lesson started a bit rocky. Poppy began with laying out a blank scrapbook and all the necessary supplies, minus glitter, in front of them. All right, here's what you'll need to get started.
Seriously? All of this?
I know. I didn't bring much of a variety. But since this is a beginner's class, I figured you'd be better off with only the basics.
If these are the basics, what the hell is advanced?
Once they got all the supplies organised, Branch, construction tools is not an acceptable theme for a scrapbook.
Why not?
Because it just isn't.
Great answer. You said pick whatever you want, so I did.
No, I mean, yeah, I said that, but I meant... Never mind. Okay, here, let's try something more inspiring. How about, seasons? That's an easy one. And this scrapbook has 16 pages, so you can do 4 pages for each of the 4 seasons.
I can't do maths, Poppy. Thanks.
A minute later.
Okay, so my fancy theme is seasons. What now? What do I add to the pages?
Whatever you want.
That does not help me in the slightest.
Images of things that represent each season. Here, let's write out a list of things together. After the list was completed and minor progress was made. Branch, could you hand me a piece of blue felt, please? No, sorry, not that blue. The darker blue. That's navy blue. I meant the regular blue. Nope, that's the thick blue felt. I need the thin blue felt. Actually, the sparkly royal blue felt might work better.
For the love of troll, how many blue felts are there?
27. I have 8 here. 9 if you want to count the teal ones, but usually we classify it under green. But eventually they got on the right track.
So, like this?
Yes, that's it, Branch. Exactly like that. Keep it up. I'm going to give Cooper a hand for a second. It looks like he's trying to become the scrapbook again. Indeed, his striped pink fur was littered with paper, felt, stickers, glitter, and even globs of glue. Cooper wasn't the only one to not make much progress on the scrapbooks. The other 6 were too busy being amused by the 2 mismatched trolls and their friendly banter. Biggie abandoned his original theme idea of his pet worm Mr. Dinkles visiting other dimensions and started scrapbooking about Poppy and Branch in other dimensions instead. Meanwhile, the twins were making a new autumn fashion collection and dedicated several pages to outfits they thought Branch would look good in. Guy actually ran back to the village to grab a bowl full of popcorn, and ended up sharing it with Smidge. Suki started to write some song lyrics, inspired by Branch's fumbling but well-meaning attempts at crafting. And in the end, Branch completed an amazing scrapbook. A good scrapbook. A scrapbook. He picked up his finished work and stared down at it in disgust.
It looks awful.
Poppy looked almost offended. What? No, it doesn't.
It looks like it was mauled by a pack of grossums.
Branch shook his head at his own failure.
How can I build an entire bunker with intricate structures, yet be unable to cut and glue papers? Half the tabs don't function properly. I used way too much glue on the snowflakes, and it's already seeping through. I put the budding flower on the summer pages instead of the spring.
Branch! Poppy reached forward and placed her hands over his. Instantly his eyes met hers. Don't focus on what didn't work. Appreciate all the things that did. For example, she gently took the book from him. Right here on the very first page. The raindrop effect you came up with is really cool. Your layering of papers and felts is so good. Especially here on this page, with the grass and the flowers. And speaking of flowers, you took care to make each one look a little different. She handed the book back to him. What else? You point something out. Branch looked back down with a humble little smile. He flipped to the back of the book and commented,
I guess I did okay with cutting out the snowflakes, before I killed them with the glue.
He caught Poppy glaring at him out of the corner of his eye. It wasn't intimidating. Of course not. The optimistic pink troll's face physically could not form such an expression. It was more cute than anything. But either way, it persuaded him to attempt some better positivity.
The beach layer turned out. The pumpkins look quite realistic. This one tab with the change of the leaves works really well. The trollmas tree was a bit smaller than I intended, but it fits well with the rest of the scenery. I decided to use sparkled felt instead of regular for the lights.
See? All kinds of things for you to be proud of. Branch nodded shyly. Then Poppy added, You forgot to point out one huge thing, though. Branch raised an eyebrow.
Oh, my pop-up snow troll on the last page?
Well, that too. There's something even bigger. The most important thing out of all of this. The poor guy looked lost, like a trolling who hadn't studied for a quiz. So she gently set the book on the grass, resting her little pink hand on his broad shoulder, and asked another question. Would you have given scrapbooking a try a few months ago?
He ducked his head with another little smile. No.
Exactly. It doesn't matter if it doesn't look perfect. The point is you tried. I think you even had some fun doing it. This time, when Poppy hugged him, Branch fully hugged her back, despite the others being in view. Releasing him, she added, And if you keep practicing, you'll keep getting better and better. Princess Poppy? Satin and Chenille's in-sync voices caught her attention. The blue twin added, Come over here for a minute. As she skipped over, Branch was planning on staying where he was and wait for her return. But then the pink troll clarified, You too, Branch. He raised an eyebrow at Satin, but didn't protest. As he slowly started towards the sisters, Poppy was already settled herself between them and was flipping through their scrapbook with a giant smile. So, what do you think? Chenille asked the princess as Branch came up and stood in front of him. Any keepers? Oh, definitely, Chenille. I love all of them. You two have really outdone yourselves. So, which one's your favourite? Satin asked. Oh, geez, Satin, I don't think I can just pick one. They're all so amazing. Poppy thought for a moment and flipped back a few pages. But if I had to pick just one, I'd have to go with this one. The style is so perfect. I bet it would look really nice. Chenille added, Oh, it certainly would. Satin nodded. This one too. The colours would be very complimentary. Branch was used to the other trolls chit-chatting like this. However, he was a bit unsettled by the way the three girls kept glancing at him between browsing the book. They weren't bad glances by any means. They were full of approval. It almost seemed like they were assessing him. What was on the pages that was so amazing? And why did it seem to have something to do with him? Noticing his bemused silence, Poppy finally acknowledged him properly. You want to see? He did. And he also didn't. But he did answer with a slightly hesitant, okay. Because whatever the hair it turned out to be, his curiosity was too strong to leave unsatisfied. So Poppy turned the book around to face him. It was titled Fall Fashion Ideas, in very fancy orange texts with a nice autumn leaf background. Inside each page had 2 or 3 little trolls, with varying pull tabs or doors containing side notes for each idea. The designs were decent, he supposed, not as insane as some of the past fashion trends he's seen, but Branch still didn't get what all the fuss was about. Until Poppy reached forward and flipped over a few pages, revealing a section near the middle. The felt troll models were all of one very specific person now. Someone with grey skin and black hair. Satin, Chenille and Poppy stared up expectantly at him. He really didn't know how to respond to this. It didn't bother him. It was just weird. Should he be flattered or embarrassed or both? Was confused an appropriate emotion? The outfits themselves were pretty nice, but do you not like them? Satin looked downcast. I told you he wouldn't be into this, Chenille murmured to her sister. No, it's not that. They're great, but why would you use me, of all trolls, as a model? Satin opened her mouth, but Chenille beat her to it. Satin and I wanted to play around with some different ideas. You know, try something new. Ending her glare at Chenille, Satin added, so we experimented with basic designs and colour schemes we thought would suit you the best, and came up with some styles that are plain, but not too plain. Chenille finished, earning another impatient glare from her sister. Branch looked closer at the designs. He was shocked to admit to himself that he kind of liked most of them. Some were autumn-themed, but there were many other colours and themes. The ones that stood out to him were long mahogany pants with orange and yellow maple leaves snaking up the leaves, and an orange vest, leafy like he usually wears. Pale orange shorts with a nice dark brown jacket. A simple brown suit with a dark orange tie. A dark blue suit, nice pants and matching vest with an ice blue long-sleeved vest, undershirt, and dark purple bow tie. Silk violet shorts and thin mauve vest with a sprig of red berries to the left. A dark green suit, shorts and short sleeves, with a green grass tie. Perhaps we can make a couple for you, Satin said excitedly.
Perhaps. Just don't expect me to ever wear them.
Oh, yes, you girls totally should, Poppy piped up, even more excited than Satin. Especially that orange vest with the mahogany leaf pants. That's one I would really like to see on you.
Branch's eyes widened at the last sentence. Satin and Chenille's eyes did the same. And so did Poppy's. It wasn't only what she said, but how she said it. The pink princess promptly avoided their stares. Her next words were incredibly rigid. Oh, look! Biggie looks like he could use a hand. I better go help him. Thanks. Bye. Poppy practically tossed the book at Chenille, sprang up like a bunny, and bolted over to where the large blue troll was seated. From Branch's point of view, Biggie appeared quite laid back, like he did not need any assistance with anything. But then again, Branch also could have sworn Poppy's cheeks looked much darker than usual when she ran off. So he must be mistaken. Unconcerned, he shrugged off both things, and said a quick thanks goodbye to the twins, whose eyes were still wide with what almost seemed like a knowing look. Then he returned to his own area, reviewing his scrapbook and debating on making a minor edit to one of the winter pages. Deciding against the edit for now, Branch instead joined the large group around the tree stump, making sure to stay a good distance away from the messy Cooper.
Poppy was hovering over Guy's shoulder. Looked like the silver glitter troll needed help more than Biggie. Suki was bobbing along to music from her headphones as she cut a bright orange paper, and Smidge looked like she was getting frustrated. The yellow troll suddenly turned her tiny head toward Branch, so suddenly it almost startled him. Her sky blue eyes burned into him. "Come here a second. I need your hand." "Me?" "Yes, you." Okay." Branch slowly made his way over to her, doubting she would need his help once she witnessed his lack of scrapbooking skill. "What is it you need a hand with?" "No, I literally need your hand. I need to trace a hand onto this sheet, but everyone's is too small except Biggie's, but his won't even fit onto the page. Yours should be just right." "Oh, okay then." Smidge instructed Branch to position his hand a certain way on the paper. As she carefully traced it, Cooper scampered over to ask Poppy's opinion on which of the 3 glitters he should use. As Smidge thanked Branch for his literal hand, and Cooper made up his mind about the glitter, the 8 hug time watches pinged. Biggie hugged Cooper, Poppy hugged Suki, Smidge held her arms out questioningly towards Branch, but he politely declined with a small step back and a slight headshake. Smidge was unbothered, but simply redirected her open arms towards Guy instead. This hug time also signalled the end of their scrapbooking. It was time to get back to the village so they could attend a special dinner, organised by the tour guide, Tug Duluth. Poppy noticed Branch opt out of hug time. That was okay. She could still give him one of her own. He never declined her hugs anymore. As she let go of Suki, Princess Poppy noticed a stray, unused smiley sticker in the grass, from either Suki or Biggie. With a tiny smirk, she quickly picked it up and then went back to the boulder to gather up the scrapbook materials. After thanking Branch for letting them set up shop in his yard, Poppy gave him his non-hug time hug goodbye, and then skipped off towards the village. Eventually the others followed, adding their own goodbyes. "Have a glitterific evening, Branch."
"Thanks for the hand."
"Bye." "Bye, dude. Thanks for the wardrobe inspirations."
"Good morning, Branch." "Nope, good night, Branch."
Once he was alone, Branch tidied up the affected area. There is very little for him to do, actually. The snack bag was messy, but also effective at cleanup. There were only a few stray paper scraps and the odd sprinkle of glitter, mostly contained to where Cooper had been. Branch cleared away the bits of debris so they wouldn't sneak into his bunker or pollute his nearby gardens. Down in his bunker, Branch stood in front of his smaller bookshelf. In his hands, he held his new scrapbook. The only scrapbook he's ever made. He'd still rather write an educational book, or romantic poetry, or build/fix machines and other structures or gadgets. But scrapbooking was okay. He still wasn't overly pleased with the finished product, but Poppy was right. Making any scrapbook, even a basic and sloppy one, was still a small accomplishment. Branch placed the scrapbook on his shelf, then headed into the kitchen to prepare some early dinner. Poppy had left him a few random craft supplies, a bit of this and a bit of that. Maybe next time he's bored, he'd give it another try. End of chapter. Hi guys, hope you enjoyed that one. I really like that one. Branch is properly coming into his own now with the scrapback as friends, and they're also respecting his space. For example, Smidge offering him a hug, but him politely declining, and she's not offended by it. And also that bit with Saturn and Chenille making him outfits, and Poppy being like, "Oh, this would look good on you," and her suddenly going bright red. Oh, I'm liking this. And the twins are on the scent. They can tell there's something going on there. And all the trollings. I love the bond that Branch develops with Keith in this fic. It's really sweet. They're both quiet and a bit not regular for what is familiar for trolls, but it really works with them. And they find a nice little camaraderie. I like that. And Priscilla, I'm almost immediately picking up that Poppy likes him. From the mouths of babes. Anyway, you guys know the drill. Like, comment and subscribe and hit that bell to get notified whenever I upload a new video. Have a good day, night, or whatever time zone you're in. Bye my guys, gals and non-binary pals. I'll see you in another video. Take care.